Good evening. We're ready to begin our meeting tonight. Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey, at 7 p.m. on the evening of Thursday, January 6, 2022, in Cafeteria B of Westfield High School, 550 Dorian Road, Westfield, New Jersey. Please be advised all attendees must wear masks. The purpose of this meeting is to hold an organization meeting of the Board of Education and to provide training to the board. That's actually not happening tonight, but that was in the advertisement. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board, on Wednesday, December 22nd, 2021, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education, located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap into Westfield, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth time, date, and location of the meeting. Mrs. Patel, could you lead us in a flag salute, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At the annual school election held on November 2nd, 2021, Robert Bonaccio, Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz, and Mary Wickens were all elected to 3-year terms. At this time in the meeting, we're going to pause to allow Rick Kaplow, our board attorney, to swear in our 3 new board members.
Okay, can I have the 3 board members up here? Do they have them already? Or what?
No, should be one at a time.
Okay. One at a time, you want?
I think so.
Yeah. All right, let's do one at a time. So, Robert, let me start with you. When I say aye, please state your name thereafter. Raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God. I do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of the Board of Education, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my abilities, so help me God. Congratulations. Sign here. I got it. Just sign right here and then give it back to me, and I will take the acknowledgement and give it to Mrs. Sullivan. All right? Thank you. All right. So here we go. All right. I have Kristen.
I, Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz,
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God. I,
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz,
do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform
all the duties of that office
all the duties of that office
according to the best of my abilities, so help me God.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, and here we go. Mary. Raise your right hand.
I, Mary Wickman,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will
to the government established in the United States of this state,
and to the government established in the United States and this state,
under the authority of the people, so help me God.
under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Mary Wickman,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office of member of the Board of Education,
for the office of a member of the Board of Education,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform
all the duties of that office
all the duties of that office
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Okay. Yep. Congratulations to our 3 new board members.
That was so different than ours.
Next item on the agenda is a roll call. Sahar Aziz.
Here.
Rob Bonaccio.
Here.
Michael Beelan.
Here.
Brendan Galligan.
Here.
Layla Morelli. Sonal Patel.
Here.
Amy Root.
Here.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz.
Here.
And Mary Wickens.
Here.
Okay, the next 2 items on the organization agenda are nominations for president and vice president. In accordance with our bylaw, 152, the process will be as follows. We will take nominations. We need a second in order to move that nomination forward. If there is more than 1 nomination for any particular office, we will take all of the nominations in seconds and then have any discussion if there is any, and then we will vote on the nominations in the order in which they were given. Okay? So first thing on the agenda is the nomination for the office of president. Do we have any nominations? Ms. Root?
I'd like to nominate Brendan Galligan for the office of President of the Board of Education. Can I have a second?
A second.
Great, thank you, Mike. Okay.
Any other nominations? Any discussion?
Yeah, if I could, I would just like to say it's been a real pleasure serving as president with Brendan as my vice president this past year. He's really been almost a co-president of sorts. It's been an interesting year with a lot of unusual tasks before us, and it's been a real pleasure to work with him. And I know he's ready for this role, and I believe that he is the right face at the right time to lead this Board of Education this year. So that's why it is with great joy that I nominate him. So.
I'd also like to comment on Brendan's nomination. Brendan has an encyclopedic knowledge of policies within the school board. He's always at meetings, he's always available to talk and discuss ideas related to the school board. And he's served on every committee that I'm aware of that the Board of Education offers. He's involved in many leadership roles outside of our school board, both in school board committees within the state of New Jersey and the county of Union. And I can't think of a better candidate for president.
Any other discussion before we vote? All right. Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaggio,
Yes.
Mike Beelin,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Leila Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Amy Root,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz, Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Congratulations. And I will now turn the meeting over to Brendan.
Look at that.
Thank you, everyone. I look forward to a successful year. Keep that. I now open nominations for Vice President.
Yep. I'd like to nominate Sahar Aziz for Vice President of the Board of Ed.
May I have a second? Layla? Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the office of Vice President? Rob?
To nominate Mike Beelin for the office of Vice President.
Okay. Any seconds?
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary.
Who seconded? Mary?
Yep. All right. Are there any other nominations for the office of Vice President? All right. Any discussion of candidates? Rob?
Yes, you.
Okay.
No, I would just like to say that both Sahar and Mike have been very valuable members of the Board of Education and bring different skill sets, different strengths to the position. One of the discussions that we as board members have been engaged in recently is the fact that in the last 2 election cycles, we have 6 brand-new board members with us on the board, and in bringing people up to speed and giving people leadership roles, we felt, Brendan and I have had conversations about the importance of looking ahead to developing all of our board members to be in a position, should, God forbid, any of the 3 of us not be elected at the next election cycle. So I can see value to Mike being vice president of the board because of all that he knows and has done during his tenure on the board, brings a great perspective, but I also see the value of developing our more junior members of the board so that they are ready for leadership roles going forward.
Thank you. Rob?
Nominated Mike, so one of the things that has always impressed me about Mike is when folks have talked about members of the board and votes that were coming up, most folks told me they never knew where Mike was going to go on anything. And that to me says something about your ability to judge information and issues as they come up on their merits, you know, when they come forward. And I think that's it's an essential perspective for the leadership, especially as a vice president. Mike has had a lot of experience on the board as well. I know he hasn't had either the vice president or presidential role, and almost to the point of development, I think it's great to have at the top folks who've spent some time on the board. Mike, never having served in the role, will bring that a certain perspective. And then certainly there's committee chairs and such to sort of, rank your leadership up. So, again, I've always appreciated Mike's perspective. I always believe, when sitting out in the audience, frankly, that Mike would always take the time to slow things down, think things through thoughtfully, and I think that makes a nice balance, as a vice president. So that's, to me, it was Mike also was the only person to reach out to me and mention that he was interested. So I'm happy to do that, and I'm thankful that you called and asked. So it's nice to see the initiative.
Any other comments? Sonal, yes?
I just want to reiterate what Amy said. I do think both Mike and Sahar bring a lot to the table in different avenues, and they both did reach out to me, which I appreciated. But going back to what Amy said, it is important that we look forward what could possibly happen after next year's election, and so that is part of the reason that I nominated Sahar for this position.
Thank you, Sonal. Any other comments? All right, I'll just...
Oh, wait. You want to say something?
Oh, yeah, I was going to comment on both of you.
Okay.
Mike, you've served on this board since you were elected in 2016. To my knowledge, you've served on every committee but long-range planning. You've chaired 3 of them, I believe. curriculum, technology, and this currently facilities. You've served as liaison to several schools over the years, and I believe
Tabling is not considered no, it's just a moment to allow the board members to do additional information. Some other things, project goals, when we had our project goals for the year. We had our goals, I've heard from numerous parents about how they want to see academic goals. I didn't expect to go and see goals changed at the table, but I brought that up in the initiative for STEM because I want parents to go and hear that we are listening and that we do understand that when Dr. Gonzalez goes and looks at his goals for next year, whether it's STEM or any other goal that we have to have a strong influence on the academic area. And it was really nice after that. The student came up to me afterwards and he said, because I mentioned the robotics program, he mentioned, thank you for mentioning that during the meeting. We don't get enough comment on, enough feedback or hear enough about robotics, and they really appreciate that. Graduation 2020. So, Greg, you remember it was the first year of COVID here? There was a rainstorm, and they canceled graduation, and students were going to go pick up their diploma in a box. I read that, and I said, these kids put in 4 years of effort. I contacted the superintendent. She said, well, we're just following what someone's doing. No other board member spoke up to the superintendent regarding this but me. I had then researched and found that some had rescheduled their graduation, and I then reached out to the superintendent again, and then graduation was back on so the kids could be handed a diploma versus picking it up in a box. I was the only board member that took that initiative to do that. As far as what Rhonda mentioned, I don't come here with any agenda. I listen to all the facts. And it's interesting because at one meeting they were saying, well, how am I going to vote? Because they don't know how I'm going to vote. I vote based on what I think is the right thing to do for our students. And I really actually appreciate that comment. And I think I just have a fire that my kids graduated to be very successful in college this first semester. And I want to continue serving on this board, and I want to just continue to make our school system better. I've been on this board for 5 years, as Brendan mentioned. I've been chair of the curriculum, curriculum, facilities, and technology groups. I've been on the finance committee, which I'm on currently. I led the Edison Fields project. I've been on the library board for 2 years. I've been the Green Team liaison. I've been the school liaison to McKinley and Edison multiple years. I've volunteered in the community for more than 20 years at St. Helens Church. And I've also worked with the administration in the town of Westfield for 15 years. I love this town, and I will do anything to make sure this town goes and succeeds. I have that part of my belly that is quick. Thank you.
First, I want to thank Solo and Layla for nominating me. I appreciate that. And I want to thank Mike for his service. I don't think anybody has ever doubted that he's committed or doubted that all of us actually are committed because we're all volunteers and many of us have children, some of them have graduated, some of them are still in the system, and those of us who have children are no longer at home are not with them tonight, right? So that we can commit to the best interest of building and improving the Westfield School District. So I am grateful to be here. I will just say that although I may be new to the school board, which is just a fact, and I don't think it's something that's shameful, and those of you who are new, welcome, and we look forward to welcoming you. I have served as chair of numerous committees and other institutions and boards. I also chaired various committees on faculties that are much larger than the school board. And so in that regard, I think with regard to board governance and governance processes and transparency and policies and law, these are things that, for better or worse, are actually part of my professional training. And also, again, I do have experience, so just like some of our new board members have experience in governance matters, but not necessarily on the board. And so I think one of the things that's just very important is that we act as one, that we communicate, that we try as much as we can to be united and not replicate any kind of divisiveness that sometimes is brought to our meetings. And so for me, this isn't something that, this is a service. And I do agree with Sona and others on the board that it's best for the board to make sure that whoever is vice president is not up for re-election, because ultimately it's up to the voters. That's how democracy works. It's very difficult to predict who will win. And to have two board members who are excellent, whether it's Brendan and Amy, or Brendan and Mike, or Mike and Amy, I don't think that's bad for the board at all, but it's just, we have to think about the various contingencies to make sure that we do have a leadership transition that's smooth, should that manifest itself. So in that regard, that's really what made me kind of take that immediate step, which normally under normal circumstances, I probably would have waited another year before I would consider the MVP, to be honest. But, you know, you gotta roll with the punches, you gotta do what's best for the institution, what's best for the board, and most importantly, what's best for the students. And I'll just finally say that I think it's important, at least for members of the public, and I think we all know this on the board, is everybody is one vote. The MVP and president is a responsibility, it's not any additional power. And I mean, for that, I'm very grateful that you're in Brendan, because I know it's this additional work. So I don't think that we should, this isn't like the president of the United States, where you actually do have more power than people who are in the legislative branch. But with that, I also, you know, if I'm elected by my peers, I do look forward to working with Brendan. I agree that he has a very strong memory, especially when it comes to policy, it's very impressive. And it is helpful to be with someone who's been on the board for a long time, which certainly saves whoever's in the VP position a lot of time from having to be around. So with that, I thank you, and I look forward to serving you in whatever position, including you, Mike, and Amy, thank you so much for your service. We all understand how much sacrifice and how much good faith effort you put into the president. This was really helpful, so thank you.
Brendan, I just want people to remember the Prindle administration 4 years ago, they never had any political experience, and everything went fine, even with all new candidates. Okay, I'm here, and I put myself out for 5 years, and I will continue to do that and show that to the community as I come out with the spot. Thank you.
Any final comments? Kristen?
You know, for me, this is, I think this is, it's a difficult position to be in when you have a lot of respect for the people that you're working with. I think that we had had a discussion, I had a discussion with several different board members about what this year's leadership should look like, and it was said amongst many of the people that I spoke to, and I didn't speak to everybody, that there was this fear that we have all these new board members. Now, I still consider myself a new board member. You know, 1 year under your belt is 1 year under your belt. And we're constantly learning and we're constantly growing. But the fear was, what happens if next year Amy, Brendan, and Mike don't get elected, or aren't interested in rerunning? So the sophomore class, so to speak, right? Sahar said she would be willing to step up and run. And I appreciate that, because I felt at the time, and like Sahar said, it's a hard thing to say, I'm going to do with only 1 year under my belt. So I think that we were looking like that bird's eye view that Gwen is always talking about, of like what's best for the board. So that doesn't mean like that I don't think that you're great for the board, that you wouldn't be great in the VP position. You and I haven't even spoken about it until yesterday, and I think that when things are rushed and things are not discussed and planned and thought out in a longer amount of time, I think there's not enough time to process and think of all different scenarios. So I want to say that I respect you both, and I really do think you both add so much to the board. And I think no matter what the decision is, I think that we're in a good place.
Sorry, do you have any final comments? Yeah, I think we need to look at who's been here 96% of the time versus 57% of the time, and really dedicated themselves to the board. I understand giving everyone the opportunity to serve. I've reached out to other board members who, to find out if they were interested in running for VP, who had a much better attendance record, to see if they would run. When I heard no one would run, that's why I put my name up. I was very interested from the beginning, but I didn't have the support of another board member who had a 90% attendance rate would have run, I would have fully supported them.
I'm sorry, I did not go through all of that checking, and I didn't know that I was going to be accused of various things that I do not believe are true. So and there's just not enough time right now to go and have this back and forth. But I do disagree with his percentages. That is not in any way reflective of my experience. But in any event, I think ultimately people have to vote. People should vote for whoever they believe will be the best VP. And there's no reason to make this personal, and there's no reason to start throwing out
I'm not making it
accusations.
personal, I'm just outlining the
And
facts
let's
that
just keep
anybody
this
can look at.
professional.
Anybody can go look at those facts on schoolboard.net right now, and they're very accurate. I've checked it twice.
Do you check in the times when everybody attends the meetings?
Oh, yes, I did actually. You were as late as an hour and a half.
I'm
And
glad
sometimes-
to know that you keep track of them.
Well, it's recorded in the minutes. So, do you have any comments? Okay. Any other comments from Mike or someone? Okay. Anna, can you explain the voting
Yes,
process?
so the first person that was nominated with a second was Sahar Aziz. So that would be the first vote. The first person that gets a majority votes of the board would become the vice president. So the first vote will be for Sahar. If the majority of the board votes yes, then Sahar becomes vice president. If she does not get a majority of the votes, then we take a vote on Mike Lewis.
And this is a roll call vote, so it's a yes or no.
So roll call vote, yes or no. Right. All right.
Any
So
questions on process?
that would mean 5 votes yes, would mean that Sahar Aziz would be vice president. Everybody clear before we start voting? Everybody ready to vote? All right, first vote is Sahar Aziz.
Yes.
Raza Nachio.
No.
Mike Veland.
No.
Brandy Galley.
Yes.
Leila Morelli.
Yes.
Sonal Patel.
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Kristen Sonic Schmaltz.
Yes.
Mary Witness.
Yes.
Congratulations, Sahar is vice president.
And I just want to say thank you. Even though I didn't get the majority of votes, I just want to thank everyone for their serving on this board.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, you want me to prepare? We're having some technical difficulties. Oh, we're still recording. Oh, very manual. Thank you. Let's proceed with the acknowledgement of the code of ethics. To open, in New Jersey, all school board members are required by law to abide by and recite at the reorganization meeting the code of ethics. We're the only elected bodies in the country that are bound by statute to a code of ethics. It's something that we take seriously, the state takes very seriously, and overall, it's a good thing for public education. As is our practice, we'll go around the table, and each board member will read one passage from the code of ethics. It's printed in the agenda. Rob, you have a printed copy in front of you? Okay. So we'll start with you, Rob. Would you mind reading number one out loud?
Sure. I will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Education and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes shall be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures.
I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and will seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children, regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing.
I will confine my board action to policymaking, planning, and appraisal. And I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them.
Number four, I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are well run. Number five.
I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises nor take any private action that may compromise the board.
Number six.
I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups, or to use schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends.
I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools, which if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. In all other matters, I will provide accurate information and in concert with my fellow board members, interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community for its schools.
So I'll read number eight.
I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the Chief Administrative Officer.
Read number nine.
I will support and protect school personnel in proper performance of their duties.
Thank you. And I'll read number 10. I will refer all complaints to the Chief's Administrative Officer and will act on complaints at public meetings only after failure of an administrative solution. David, do we have copies here to sign? Of this?
Yes.
Okay. There will be something emailed. We have to sign it every year. So when you get that email, please sign it and sign it. We had hoped to have a board training at this point, which would help reinforce the code of ethics that we just read. Unfortunately, that will have to occur at our next board meeting, but we're looking forward to a wonderful presentation there. I ask the board to approve Robert's Rules of Order, the current revised edition, as parliamentary procedure guide for the Westfield Board of Education. A copy of the cheat sheet is attached to the agenda. If anybody's interested, I can sign them for the full 1,200 pages.
Need a second?
Yes, thank you.
I'll second. Ready for a vote? Sahar Aziz?
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio?
Yes.
Mike Beelan?
Yes.
Brandon Galligan?
Yes.
Leila Morelli?
Yes.
Sonal Patel?
Yes.
Amy Root? Yes. Kristen Sonic-Schmelz?
Yes.
Mary Wiggins?
Yes.
During this portion of the meeting, members of the public are invited to address the Board of Education on any topic. The board requests that individuals state their name and address for the record, and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president, not to individual board members or staff. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful to the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, the superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. Please note that if any member of the public becomes interrupted during the meeting, the board president may terminate that participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from the meeting or an adjournment of the meeting. Each speaker's statement shall be limited to 3 minutes in duration. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak tonight? Please come to the podium. And please be mindful of keeping distance between each other and Q&A.
First of all, I'm excited to be the first member of the public to be addressing President Galligan.
I like the ribbon.
President Galligan, I have 2 comments.
Name and address, please.
Sorry, Gary Compasto, 929 Columbus Ave. A thank you and a caution. The thank you is for Dr. Gonzalez, this board, Principal Ascendis, and all the other principals for having as much in-person schooling as possible. While we're all disappointed in 3 remote days at the high school, speaking for a lot of parents, thank you for resisting the temptation to go the easy route and stay remote longer. Every day of remote schooling is a day too many, and I really appreciate the efforts that everyone made to open back up. Thank you. Not all towns did this, so I appreciate that. I also want to thank the winter coaches and the after-school activity advisors for allowing the high school kids to participate in their after-school activities while remote. I think that was really important for the social and emotional health of the kids, even during the brief shutdown. So again, thank you. Not all towns did this when they were remote, and I really appreciate everyone's efforts to let the kids do what they need to do. My caution is this: please don't let us backslide. Please make sure that we have plans in place for if there are again staff shortages that we can stay open. As a parent, my son's reaction when we told him about the school being remote was heartbreaking. I worry that if we're back to significant amounts of remote learning, this is going to end with tragic circumstances, tragic consequences for some Westfield students. And that's not something any of us want or can live with. It happened last year in West Essex, it can happen here. Keeping the schools open is important. It's the most important thing for these kids. We have to make sure that we do it. I think one of the keys in not backsliding is we can't over-test. The testing of asymptomatic, vaccinated, healthy children is only going to lead to mass quarantining of children that pose no real danger to vaccinated teachers or other vaccinated students. What we've done with our vaccinated students has been working, with few kids getting stuck in protocols and no severe illness nor death in the town. We seem to have a balance that other towns do not have. State guidelines are just that, guidelines. We've elected and hired people up here to lead. Let's continue to lead and not follow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still along the lines, but how are you? Congratulations to all the new members. My name is Kevin Zippler, 919 Mountain View Circle. Lifelong resident of Westfield, town I used to fondly call Utopia to many of my colleagues and friends in school. Now I find myself searching states in the South on Zillow almost daily. I'm the father of 4 children who, like every other tax-paying parent, have watched them suffer and be irreparably harmed in so many ways, while being used as political pawns under the guise of safety against a virus that is statistically zero threat to them. I do realize that currently you are not responsible for the mask mandates, as that comes from our feckless governor. The ever-changing CDC and FDA guidelines regarding quarantine time, vaccine, testing rules, etc. are just that, guidelines. All of you have many of the final decisions of how school is run day to day. 24 months ago, we didn't know what we didn't know, so some of these policies were mildly acceptable. Those days are over. This pandemic ended 6 months ago. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. The world has been chasing fool's gold for 2+ years, with the audacity and hubris to think that we can control an invisible airborne virus by staying 6 feet apart, opening a window, and putting on a suffocating piece of cloth. Vaccines were created in record time and sold as a great panacea. Then it was a booster, or 2, or 3, and now 4, just today when Denver said. Finally, people are realizing with this virus that anyone can become infected and transmit it regardless of vaccination status. Those vaccinated thus far seem to have milder symptoms, which is a great thing, and it's anyone's personal choice. I've been vaxxed and had COVID, and that was my choice, not the COVID part. If a parent wishes to vaccinate their effectively zero COVID risk child with an unknown substance, that is also their choice. I believe that I speak for the majority in this town, even if some are afraid to admit it publicly. All I'm asking is that when our governor lifts the school mask mandates, that we do the same. No more testing, no more 5 days home from school due to close contact to a positive student, regardless of vax status. No more lunch outside, no more half days, no more remote. If you're sick, stay home. When you feel better, come back. Just like we've done with the flu and other illnesses for 100 years. If this is not going to be the protocol in the near future, at the very least, please let the community know, as sadly, it will most certainly be the last time many of our children will be students of Westfield Public Schools and perhaps residents of this state. Sincerely, thank you for your time.
Good evening. Emily Barker, 434 Longfellow Avenue. I'm going to use my 3 minutes to address 3 different issues. First one, Dr. G. As you're aware, I've been working with the Westfield Historical Society, which has developed educational assembly programs designed either for presentation on their campus or on the individual elementary school campuses. I can confirm for you there has been a lot of interest from all 6 elementary schools I've spoken with. However, all of the principals have said that they were told that you have put all spring assemblies on hold. I've sent 3 emails to this about this, and they said that they could be very flexible. They could come to the school. The kids can come to them. They would do it outside as safely as necessary. So I guess I'm just wondering if you could please address why we can't plan any spring assemblies, because I'd really love to do this for the kids, as they have benefited from this partnership with the Westfield Historical Society in prior years. The second topic is about the Start Strong assessment. According to several New Jersey sources, 50% of 4th graders and 55% of 5th and 6th graders in the state scored at the lowest levels in math. My question to you is, what is the plan to address learning loss since these assessment results now have been received? And on a related note, how is the district addressing the lower grades that didn't take this assessment? This should be a priority for the district. And as a final question on this topic, what percentage of the funds is going towards addressing this learning loss versus DEI, which I know was stated as one of the priorities for the district, but I would argue at this point, we have data that shows that learning loss is more important than DEI. I will end with this topic. As a parent and community member, I understand that there are diverse point of views when it comes to many things pertaining to raising and educating our children. I believe that the Westfield community's expectation is that you make decisions based on what is best for the children and not be swayed by politics or fashionable opinions for the moment. For instance, many members of our community believe that the half-day school this week didn't do much to help our children catch up in their lost learning. The best decision for our children would have been full day in person or full day remote. I understand your desire for compromise, but please understand that our children have suffered academically, socially, and cognitively. On a related note, please follow the science and the data that says that, as everyone knows, there has been barely detectable spread of COVID in schools. Schools are simply not COVID vectors. Since this was the case before and after vaccines, schools should be full day, and there should be purposeful initiatives to integrate and unite students versus segregate and divide them. Please think of what is best holistically for the students' social and emotional well-being.
My name is Timothy Eaton. I live at 762 Norwood Terrace. Happy New Year to the whole board. Congratulations to all the board members. I wrote a letter a month or so ago to the Westfield leader, and I sent it also to the Board of Education. And excuse me for being repetitious, but I did want to read it here again tonight concerning the Edison Field project. Increasing field capacity and preserving our neighborhoods. After attending public meetings, town council meetings, Board of Education meetings, Recreation Commission meetings, and Board of Health meetings, and after reading many letters to the editor of the Westfield Leader, it is very clear that there are better alternative options to the current Edison Field project plan. We can increase the capacity and at the same time preserve our neighborhoods. The current Edison Field calls for artificial turf, plan calls for artificial turf and towering lights. The same is true for future projects at Memorial Park and Elm Street, as well as lighting towers at Tamacos Park. Increasing hours at night is not the way to increase field capacity. This will cause more noise at night, safety and medical issues, and a deterioration of quality of life and home values in these surrounding neighborhoods. Notably, there is currently no parking plan, or at least not one that I have seen yet, for the Edison Field project. Cars will park on neighborhood streets near the field, resulting in more traffic congestion and the associated safety risks for pedestrians and motorists. There are alternative options for increasing field capacity. Other locations, such as the wooded area at Tamacos Park across from the Conservation Center, identified originally in the Parks Master Plan, Roosevelt School, and other Board of Education properties, as well as the former Lord and Taylor lot, have all been suggested for review. The additional field capacity created at Tamacos Park should include an evergreen buffer and additional trees planted at the park and around town to preserve the green theme. Hours of field capacity should be increased through more grass fields and not by more hours at night using lights. Towering lights do not belong in residential neighborhoods. Using artificial turf on existing or new fields is not safe for the people using the fields, especially children, and it's not safe for surrounding neighborhoods. More injuries, medical and safety issues, high heat, exposure to toxins and carcinogens, greenhouse gases, emissions, etc. Increased flooding, pollutants, poisoning our water, and seeping into our neighborhood yards will ruin our neighborhoods. This is a heavy price to pay for supposedly reducing maintenance costs of grass fields. If grass fields are the right option, then we need to research better methods to improve and maintain our grass fields. Experts and other towns favoring grass fields need to be consulted.
Thank you. Time's up.
Excuse me?
Time is up. Thank you.
Increasing, am I finished?
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
In response to Omicron, Westfield Dixon was to go that day. My sense is that Westfield would have gone all the roads it could, but was constrained by state rules to offer the minimum in-person learning that the state considers a day of school. President Biden has said that schools should remain open. Instead, children were subjected to a disruption in their new normal routine and subjected to varying dystopian and draconian rules preventing them from exercising simple human rights like taking sips of water. There are posts all over social media about this from Westfield parents and kids of all ages across various schools in the district. I want to know how many of you sat at your desk for 4+ hours at the BOE building or wherever you work and had to be masked without water under constant scrutiny for mask compliance. Since the start of this meeting, I've seen at least 2 of you luxuriously pull down your masks to take sips of water. Shouldn't our kids have the same ability to do that in school? So we're doing half day with an hour of afternoon remote instruction. Is half day supposed to reduce risk? Children wearing Paw Patrol cloth masks aren't stopping the highly infectious Omicron variant. Only maybe N95s are. Nor are healthy children at high risk for being affected by it. What they are at high risk for is more learning loss and future PTSD. It doesn't have to be like this. Westfield received somewhere between $1.6 and $2.1 million in federal ESSER funds from 3 different grants, according to my accounting. These 3 grants had different acceptable use fine print, but all shared the goal of preparing for a spike of coronavirus and providing full-time school at the same time. A spike just like the one we have now. So what did Westfield do with that $2 million exactly? Did we plan contingencies like tents and heaters so kids could eat and drink and be in school full-time? No. Did we stock up on KN95 masks if that's what it takes for everyone to feel safe? No. Did we invest in upgrading remote learning technology platforms and training teachers to use them effectively, just in case? Not that I can tell. Is our grand plan for an uptick in COVID to go half day? In your fall ESSER report to the state, you were asked to provide the extent to which you could, quote, continuously and safely open and operate schools for in-person learning. You responded, quote, most of the needs have been addressed. So where did the money go to address those needs? The only thing I'm aware of for sure is upgraded HVAC, but that was not $2 million worth of work. But that upgraded HVAC is almost certainly more effective than that Paw Patrol mask, and likely the reason we've had no measurable transmission of COVID while children are physically in school. I do know, however, that the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum on November 7, 2021, via email, explored the possibility of using ESSER funds to pay an external DEI consultant. Is that what we use the remaining funds on? And while we're on the topic of DEI consultants, I've seen evidence that Westfield sent student survey data to the external DEI consultant. Were parents consulted about that? I think you should take note of the recent Cedar Grove case where the state and a judge determined Cedar Grove broke the law just by administering a similar student survey, let alone sharing it with an external consultant.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mona Nikolai. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. 124 Marlborough Street. I have a license in New York. I have a license in New Jersey. I would like to illustrate to you what impact your decision has on your students, some of them my patients. On January 2nd, we all received an email from Dr. Gonzalez announcing that beginning Monday, high school will be virtual. Immediately after that, I started to make phone calls to my patients. Some of them previously threatened to kill themselves if the school goes virtual again. I can assure you that my list was long. I want to talk to you about another pandemic, more real and serious than the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic of children and teenagers that became depressed, anxious, and suicidal over the last 2 years. Before COVID, 1 in 6 American youth died of suicide in 6 hours. Right now, it's between 11 and 12. Adolescent or children die of suicide in 6 hours, over the span of 6 hours. Suicide is a bigger health threat than COVID. I would venture to say that your decisions made things worse. I know that you are led by politicians and by science, but I want you to realize that you are depriving our younger members of the society of education, emotional and social development. Doesn't make any sense to deny our children the opportunity to enjoy and celebrate life when deaths from and with COVID are equivalent to 0.16 of the entire population. You need to remember that the stolen COVID generation will one day run the country and care for us in our older age, and they would remember.
Carl Cetera, 948 Minot Trail. I've been fighting since the beginning of the school year for parents' right to choose whether their child wears a mask or doesn't wear a mask, and stop mask mandates in New Jersey and Westfield. I've been yelled at to follow the science, move to Florida if I don't like it. I'm all for following something that makes a difference in our community, but masks have not proven to do anything. What I've liked and enjoyed the most in my life as an American citizen and a resident of New Jersey is the freedom of choice, and not to have myself or my children mandated to wear a mask. They have been proven harmful and unhealthy when worn long periods of time. I'm here tonight to prove to you that scientifically, my opinion is correct. We need to give parents and children the right to choose to wear a mask. Florida's practice since day one of the pandemic.
Please keep your mask on.
I was just doing what Shelley Brindle did in her
She's not hurt.
her speech. Florida's practice since day one of the pandemic, when America was founded on freedom to choose. They allow their citizens, adults, and children to choose whether or not they have wanted to wear a mask throughout most of this pandemic in schools, restaurants, offices. Florida's had one of the most visited states from within the U.S. and outside during the pandemic. Out of all the states in the nation, if not the most. Even the politicians from other states that pass mask mandates and preach wearing them go there for breaks for masks. Because Florida follows the Constitution and they practice the freedom to choose to wear a mask. After 2 years, not only are the people in the state fine, they're experiencing strong economy, one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country, and all while having the freedom to choose to wear a mask. As a state, they've led the way the last few months in our country as one of the states with the lowest reported cases of COVID and hospitalizations. You don't need a news outlet, CNN, NBC, any politician, Biden, Murphy, Fauci, DeSantis, any pharmaceutical company, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, which both have been proven for lying about efficacy of drugs and their products for years, even so far as lying about baby powder. The good news is you don't need any of that. You have a real to-life proven experiment that has occurred in Florida, proving and showing that mandating masks in school and everyday life doesn't work or make a difference. The freedom to choose wearing a mask or not wearing one is the right choice. But for some people in this country, we decide it's not okay anymore. I'm just going to skip through them because the numbers don't lie in Florida. Their population is 22 million, and for the duration of COVID, sadly, they experienced 62,000 deaths as of 21 hours ago. That's a 0.0028% death rate. That's less deaths per capita than New Jersey, whose population is 9 million and has experienced 29,000 deaths and a rate of 0.0031. And they've had mandates the whole time for masks. Why these statistics tell us they don't make a difference. New Jersey's experienced more deaths per capita than Florida. So please stop giving away our freedom of choice and all our other freedoms the great men and women of this country have fought for all of us to have and enjoy. We live in the greatest country for a reason. Don't throw it away. Look at the real science experiment that's happened for free the last 2 years right in front of your eyes in Florida. The proof is in the statistics. Give our children the choice to wear a mask in school. Parents' right to choose, no more mandates.
My name is Jill Baker Vogel. I live on Baker Avenue. I wasn't going to talk tonight, but I am say some things. My children are the 9th generation of the Baker family, being raised in this town. When my husband and I decided to move back here, we were so thrilled to raise our children in this town. We have such a long history here. And we constantly are looking at other areas to move to within New Jersey and without, because of what's happening in these schools on multiple levels. The one doctor that got up here was talking to you, did that resonate with you about the suicide calls that she's getting because you guys decided to go virtual? You guys are doing half days in the lower classes. That puts a lot of pressure on the kids, puts a lot of pressure on the parents. We're 2 years into this pandemic, if you want to call it that, and this is the best that you can do. Mr. George raised where all the funds were going that you guys got to keep our kids in school and make everything safe. We're 2 years in. What are you doing? What's the plan moving forward? We really deserve answers, and what I expect to happen is that we're going to go home and not hear any answers from this. You're not going to reply, you're not going to respond, and you're just going to keep doing what you're doing, which is nothing. So it would be really nice for us to go home and in a couple days get a response that you're taking what some of us are saying seriously, and you're going to look into it and come up with plans to keep our kids in full day, all year long, regardless of spikes. The other issue that I wanted to talk about was the
masks. Mayor Brindle at an all-mask mandated ceremony on Tuesday took her mask down for the entire time that she was speaking. So it really kind of throws a mixed message. I believe she also did it in a Board of Health meeting. Throws a mixed message to the parents and the students in this town that struggle to wear masks. It's hard up here talking to you with this mask on. I'm struggling. I've been talking to you for 2 minutes, let alone children in classrooms for 8 hours a day. It's horrific. Also, the windows are open in these schools. It's freezing out because teachers are afraid to get COVID. Like, they're already in their half day. Things need to change in the school system or you guys are going to lose a lot of really good families that have invested a lot. It's really sad and depressing.
Seeing no other members of the public who wish to speak, Director Gonzalez, you wish to address any comments?
So I'd like to begin just to answer directly. There is a reference to a prohibition on spring assemblies. I've never made such a prohibition, so I don't know what that's in reference to. So I'll definitely confer with the elementary principals and certainly speak to them. I'll speak to the administration certainly. Start Strong assessments. We continue to gather data from both the local and state sources. Dr. Panaro will be presenting the results to the Board of Education and Public at the February 8th meeting, which is what we were scheduled for. So we look forward to including a detailed breakdown of our performance, as well as the plans that we have in place to address and respond to the data that we received, and certainly the work that has been done up to this point as well. The question regarding the concerns regarding the social emotional well-being of our students is certainly something that we do take seriously. Our counselors, our teachers, our administrators are very aware and sensitive to that, which is why we do not make any of these decisions lightly and certainly attend to the health and well-being of our students directly through any measures and means possible. So if there are students who are in crisis or struggling, we certainly encourage you to reach out to school staff so that we can provide support and assistance. Each and every decision that's made is one that takes into account all of our multiple and competing and concurrent variables, both to maintain the continuity of instruction for the academic benefit of students, but also for the social and emotional well-being of our students. Those are competing, concurrent, and without a doubt, priorities that this district holds truly to the heart. We do not take lightly the work of the administration and the teaching staff and all the members of our school staff, the role that they play in keeping our schools open and safe for instruction. But I can assure you, it is exhausting for all of us, for all of our staff, for all of our students, for all of our families, for all of these board members, to continue to engage in the challenges associated with this public health crisis. But as long as it continues, our work will continue as well. Doesn't mean that all of our decisions will be met with agreement, but I assure you that we do put forth care, consideration, and thought in all of those decisions. There is reference, a specific request for details regarding where the additional relief funds that the district has received. So just to give a sense of some of the areas that have been, that we've allocated funds for, I think also speak to how we've been able to address some of these concerns. So we have used some of the funds over the course of the past year and a half, I believe, is when we've been receiving them, to be able to support salaries and benefits for interventionist teachers at the math and language arts, for math and language arts. We've also added a student assistance counselor at the high school, something that has not existed for quite some time, and certainly speaks to our support and dedication to the social and emotional well-being of our students, especially at the high school as well. We've been looking at also ways that we can include support for instruction through remote learning and hybrid learning and in-person learning environment, and therefore money has gone to instructional supplies and all of the above, as well as custodial and health supplies as well. We've had some money put towards our HVAC upgrades. We've also allocated, because the funds are intended to help support our response to some of the unforeseen expenses that have presented themselves as a result of the pandemic, we have been able to reallocate and use some of those funds to assist in the payment of tuition and services for students with special education needs and students with disabilities. We have included some of the most recent funds for staff training, supporting response to intervention, which is a means to be able to provide academic supports for students through the general education setting, as well as being able to use those strategies in order to support students as they progress and their needs may develop as well. So in order to train all of our staff, some of that money has been allocated for that purpose. We've also allocated funds, additional funds for additional substitutes as a result of the staff challenges that we have witnessed as a result of the needs associated for balancing in-person learning with the needs for remote instruction. We've allocated funds for additional substitutes that are dedicated to provide either coverage for our schools when they need it or remote instruction for our students who are needing it. When those, unfortunately, those challenges start to increase, our resources don't always increase as well, so this has been helpful for us in that regard. We've used some of the funds and will use some of these funds for salaries and the benefits associated with summer and after-school programs that are intended to support students through the academic transition of returning to full-time in-person learning, and certainly in response to all the data that we collect and review. And then there is also funds that have been allocated in all of this as well to support the equity audit that we have identified as part of the district goal. And these funds often are used in conjunction with our operating funds. In order for us to maximize the use of these funds, we are able to use these funds in conjunction with our operating funds, so that in some cases we're able to move things from our operating budget into these budget lines, and likewise use these lines to be able to offset the others as well. So all of those are the general categories that total over $3 million in funds that we've received that speak to academic and social emotional efforts that we have been trying to address and support in the school district. And well before my arrival, and I applaud the Board of Education and District for the ability to see this moving forward and for the continuity of those efforts since my arrival.
Just to clarify, that $3 million isn't a one-year expenditure. It's over several years, correct?
This has been over the course of the onset of the CARES Act money, and in some cases, the expiration of these funds will expire in 2024. And they to President Galligan's point, these are not renewable, unfortunately, or added to our budget each year. So all that is to say, I thank everyone for continuing to share their personal experiences, their perspectives, and the work that we're doing. The words that are shared are not lost, even though they are not always seen in what we do, and we don't believe that we are taking them into account at some times. I can assure you we are taking them to heart and trying our best as an administration. I certainly can speak for the Board of Education and all of the staff of our schools in trying to provide what's best for our students.
Dr. Gonzalez, can I just add
Yes,
that
please.
in addition to the funds that we received from the general government,
Your mic's not on.
Anthony?
In addition to those funds, the district has expended about $4.5 million out of capital reserve funds for upgrades to our HVAC systems district-wide to enable students and staff to safely be in the buildings.
Any questions for board members?
Yeah, I just wanted to just say something. I just wanted to address some of the things that the constituents brought up. You know, it's so funny because you speak to one kid and they have one preference, you speak to another kid, they have another preference. You know, families all have different preferences. When my daughter found out that that she would be, my high schooler found out that she was going to be quarantined this week, my kids are quarantined this week, her first response was, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be in school. And she was so happy that it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was virtual learning because she got the full day. And she was so relieved. And she has to miss tomorrow and Friday, and she's having a really hard time with that because she feels like learning loss and she won't catch up. So, you know, one person's trash is another person's treasure, so to speak. You know, so, and I think that's the thing about the pandemic is that the options are, none of them are ideal, except for being in school full time, and it's not always possible. And I think, I just want to say, you know, I appreciate how closely the superintendent and Dr. Dillon also worked with the Department of Health. And I do want to reiterate that we want to be open. That is Westfield's goal. There was no forcing of us to be open. There were many districts who did not. I completely understand that everybody wants to be full day in school, and that my daughter, if we're not going to be, wants to be full day virtual. I understand that everybody has different preferences, but the goal is for us to have our kids in school full day. That is everyone's goal. That's the teacher's goal too. I work in a different district, and we don't want our kids not in school either. So I just wanted to say that.
Anybody else? John?
So I agree with that to some extent. I don't think there's any real ideal solution that any one of the potential options that we have has its pros and cons. What I want to try to avoid, and I don't get to be leadership or anything like that because I do, but I definitely want to put us in a direction where I don't know that comparing sorrows and sadness necessarily helps people feel like they're listened to. So what I think is a great path forward, and I don't want to focus on the problems, you know what's going on. I think after a number of years we have a pretty good idea of positives and negatives of each solution. What I'd like to suggest, and I think Dr. Gonzalez is quite open to this, certainly in the conversations I've had with him, is taking a look at assessing what it is about the different ways of staying open that is working, different things that are not, and seeing how we might be able to apply some of the things that are working in other settings. So the virtual is a great example, right? So if you've got kids who are under quarantine, they prefer to be virtual because they're actually going to get a full day of class. Well, so the question I think we should be asking ourselves is why are kids in quarantine not getting a full day of class in any other, in any other setting? And is there a way to improve upon that? So there's no easy way to get through any of this stuff, and I very much agree with that. I think there's never going to be a perfect solution to anything, but I just want to make sure that our focus stays on, okay, we've seen what we've got, we've seen what works, we've seen what doesn't. Now let's see if we can move our way forward on that, because I don't think anybody thinks anything here is perfect, and I just want to make sure that's a great way for everyone here to understand, I think, up here in the board and then parents out there that, we're hearing everything, but we got to kind of push our way forward with some of the things that we're seeing. I mean, there's got to be a way to try to make things work, and if not, let's explain why it can't. Right? We got reasonable folks here.
So I agree with you, and that's exactly what I'm saying. But the constraints that we have are financial and staffing, and some of those go hand in hand. So we do really need to think outside of the box and how to provide the best that we can for our students and our teachers as well. But we are faced with very realistic limitations, and this is not just our district, but particularly our district, because we are stretched financially so thin. And like you said, virtual instruction, if you're quarantined and you're not, and the school isn't closed, 1 day, 1 hour a day live, is a very tough pill to swallow. Not personally, in general, that's a very tough pill to swallow. But there are real constraints, so we have to unfortunately work within them.
Well, I get that. Like, I'm out of business right now. I understand we got a ton of constraints to work with, but I don't want to focus on those anymore. I want to focus on what we can do. So I think we've got the right person to think that through. So look forward to working with you on it.
The challenge is we don't operate the school district. That's not our job, that's the superintendent's job, and we hire him with full trust and faith, because there are so many moving parts. And I think Exhibit A is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The high school could have been half, Dr. Gonzalez had approved it being half day in person, but we couldn't because there was not enough staff. For whatever the reasons are, whether the staff were sick themselves or whatever the circumstances are. And so things are, it's very easy to pontificate or to direct things when you don't have when you think you have a full picture, but it really is a very difficult job. We appreciate you, Dr. Gonzalez, for what you do. And we also appreciate that the other balance we have is a public health crisis, a global public health crisis. And it's tough. But I just wanted to reiterate that I think, at least as far as the board's concerned, right, the role is policy, strategy, appraisal, but not day-to-day operations, day-to-day management. It's just not within our jurisdiction.
I want to thank everybody from the public for coming out tonight. You guys are passionate and come out regularly, and I thank you for that. As Dr. Gonzalez said, we can't always respond to every comment, but we do hear them. We do consider them when forming next steps and action plans. Doesn't mean we always act on them, but they are considered. And we do appreciate you for coming out and constantly reminding us of your positions on various issues. If there are no other comments from the board, I'd like a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Natalie. Can I have a second? Someone else. Second from Zahar. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.